120 seconds. 110 seconds. 100 seconds. 90 seconds. 80 seconds. 70 seconds. 60 seconds. 50 seconds. 40 seconds. 30 seconds. 20 seconds. 10 seconds.
'My name's J.C. McCauley.
I'm Naisha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
All right, my friends, once again, it's time to get our talk on. It's Morning Talk with me, your host, J. Sam McCauley. Along with the champions of talk, we have talk champion Cleo Duke-Wright in the house. How you doing there, Miss Cleo?
Damn.
Doing good? You know, I made your coffee, by the way.
I see it right
Okay,
here.
all right.
Right here. Thank you so much.
All right, I wasn't sure whether you saw it or not.
Yeah.
All right. So how's your week?
Well, my week was extremely busy.
Mm-hmm.
Serving others. And today is my day. I'm running away. So it was a busy week. It was going to be a good day today.
All right, so some me time.
Some me time today, yes.
That's good to take. Yeah, you should take a little. People need to take a little me time. You know, relax a little bit. You know, so get your headspace together. Because if you spend your whole week pouring out your head on the street for everyone else, at the end of the week you have no mind left. It's just like a vacuum.
You say, please, maybe they'll realize that they're working me to death and they'll take notice and kind of help me out a little bit. But it doesn't seem that way. It doesn't seem that way.
But people are actually quite funny when it comes to the services that you provide. It's like it's a mall giving away free food. You know, they come back, they want more, and then they complain that the food isn't good enough. You got any better fruit than this? Every day I come here and say,
just get me this. Just do this. Just do this as I'm about to lay down and get up for the 5th time. Yes, it is.
Yeah. All right. Well, nonetheless,
you got to take time for yourself.
You got to take time for yourself.
Yes, you do.
But of course, the greatest gift to give is the gift of time and of your, philanthropic. You're a philanthropist.
I'm a philanthropist.
A philanthropist.
Okay. Philanthropist.
Yeah. You give of yourself, time, resources, and money, but you give more of yourself and time, which is the most important thing that you can give. Time. There's no way to recoup time.
No.
And you give a lot of your time.
Where are you? What do you need? Well, I just want to know where you are. And then talking to Daphne. Talk.
Well, to quote the great Earl Shepherd, he said, "Don't do your good works." I'm paraphrasing. Don't do your good works because you're looking for a reward for those to whom you do the good works, for whom you do the good works, but do it because it's a gift of love and something that you really want to do.
And that is absolutely true. But every once in a while, you want a little, hey, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Just every once in a while. Not every day. Just once in a while.
A thank you goes a long way.
Just a thank you. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, every Monday we start the program, or actually we start the week off with a special guest. Usually on Fridays, it's kind of like just chill and we just have just light conversation. Wednesdays, of course, is very controversial. There's always something going on with Cacique and Dr. Maya Bowen. But on Fridays, like I said, we kind of chill it back. But today, we do have a special guest. Every once in a while on Fridays, we have special guests. And today we have a special guest joining us via the technology of Zoom, which is, of course, how everyone gets around these days. You don't have to send a limo, just Zoom in. So we'll welcome our special guest this morning, Mr. Sean Allen. How are you doing there, sir?
Good morning. I'm great. And yourself?
I'm doing exceedingly well. Before we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are and what you do.
That's perfect. So my name is Sean Allen. I'm a firefighter, father of 4, career firefighter down in New York, but I live in Connecticut. And I'm the board chair of the National Parents Organization here in Connecticut.
All right. Wow. Firefighter. Aggressive interior attack. Go in and fight the fire. I think firefighters are the world's biggest hero. I know police officers hate to hear that, but firefighters go into the danger and actually fight fire to save your structure and to save lives. They go into harm's way, and that's a special quality in my book. That's just me. I don't say that to be blowing smoke. I seriously believe that.
Absolutely.
So, what does the National Parents Organization do?
Perfect question. So we are a not-for-profit. We're a national organization. We were founded in the late 90s. And our goal is to push legislation and strengthen the child's relationship with their parents after divorce and separation. So we looked for legislation within the different states to try to ensure that, studies show across the board that children who have access to both parents do well in numbers. They do well in schools. They do well in their mental health. They perform well in life after college. So we're looking to ensure that so that these families are not torn apart in family court.
Mm-hmm. Now you say legislation in different states. I guess by that statement, how young people fare after divorce is different from state to state. There's no national standard.
Absolutely. Well, I can speak on Connecticut. 33% of all children live in single parent households here in Connecticut. That's a high number of children given the amount. We have a high rate of divorce here throughout the country. But most importantly, we focus on the statistics for the results after, people go to court and they're trying, family court is a court of equity, which means that both parents and the children should have the right and equal access to both parents here in the state and around the country. They look to push a custodial, non-custodial parent. You had a parent who goes from seeing that kid every day to being an every other weekend parent and a dinner visit during the week. So we're looking to change that here and across the nation.
Wow, 33% of
Yeah,
that of all children. Wow.
Here in Connecticut, 33%. Yep.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that high.
Yeah, and what I found interesting is that we have a social norm here, where we feel that children are better off with one parent than the other. If you look at some of the most gender equal countries, Sweden is probably the best place for women to live. They have the best gender neutral laws. They have shared parenting. Both parents are fared the same. A lot of our standards and how we treat each other come from the culture that we build here through law and policy. And that needs to be changed, because what we do is we set a system of conflict up. So you have two people who split, where it should be right down the line. We didn't work out. It's okay. You guys, 50-50, you share. We teach our children to share. Then we get outside of a marriage or a divorce or a separation, and all of a sudden it becomes contested. You have these lawyers who are pushing for litigation, because more litigation, more conflict equals more money. And what I found interesting is that even Connecticut, we have a predominantly high population of white Americans, as well as where that fares off to our minorities. We still are predominantly affected by this. So minority children are seeing the worst outcomes from the separation. And that's what I'm here to focus on today.
So then the conflict would seemingly then be maintained by legislative fiat. I mean, like, who determines which parent is the better parent? I mean, where, given what you were saying about, the Sweden, who decides that parent X is better? Because generally speaking, I would dare to say that most people think that the mom is the best person for the kids to live with.
Not always true.
Not always true, but that
right.
The tender years doctrine. So back in the day, when males were the breadwinners, which has drastically changed now, you have more women in the workforce, etc. Back in the day, in common law, children were property. So there were more children after separation or divorce that were going with the fathers. Then you had the tender years doctrine, which came up, which said, during the early years of life, children fare off better with their mother. This was back in the 60s and going back, and then that's since changed. So now where it has, we have a fundamental right, and that's the 14th, it's in the Constitution. 14th Amendment states that, the right, care, and responsibility of the children lies within the parent. So the courts step in, and where they say is, okay, we have these 16 points. I'll start with Connecticut. We have these 16 points of what we feel is the best interest of the child. And at the end, they say, you know what, mom, if dad decided to work, part of the nuclear family, you have one parent working, one parent staying home because of childcare issues or the amount of money for childcare. They say, well, that child has a better bond with that parent. So we're going to push that parent or push that child in that household. Where that sets it up is that now if I sacrifice as a working part of that organization or that family unit, Now all of a sudden you're saying that I don't have a tie to my children. So now if you have two parents working and a child home with the babysitter or the nanny, does that nanny's relationship with that child fare off better? So we're pushing a narrative that, and especially, and I'm not pro parent, I'm pro child, and I think we get so caught up in, between fathers' rights movements and mothers' rights movements. It's a fight, and we're not looking at what the children's best interests are. And the children, all they know is mom and dad. They just want to be with mom and dad. They don't care about finances or this and that. They care is, when am I seeing my mother? When am I seeing my dad? And that's the narrative we need to push here, because if you look across the board, it affects minorities worse off than anybody.
What makes you think that legislation is going to solve the problem, or legislation can do something for the problem, since they have made such a mess of it for decades?
So legislation, laws, and policy is how we shape culture here. We might feel a certain way or standpoint or how we feel across the nation about something. If we don't push our legislators, and when I mean legislators, I mean our local legislation. So by having laws, you have judges that legislate from the bench because there's ambiguous language. So if you have laws that state that there's a rebuttable presumption of two fit parents to have equal access to the child, that means that these lawyers can't go in there and these judges can't go in there. They have a smaller window. Judges have, I'll put it like this, they have a large, there's no accountability and there's no liability. So if you look at, for instance, corporations, they started with diversity, equity, and inclusion across the country. And there was this big push for DEI across all the boards in corporate America. And that's because of liability. That's because if somebody sues, if somebody feels maltreated because they're African American, they're a woman, they're transgender, anything, then there's a lot of finance, there's a lot of stake behind that. There's no accountability in these court systems. So where you might go in and I don't know if you're familiar with the racial wealth gap here, especially in Connecticut, is one of the highest in the country, where the white Americans are making 10 times more than black Americans. That's not going to change. So your access to justice determines on how you can afford a lawyer. There's more home ownership, and the net worth of black Americans and Latino Americans are very low here. So when we look at these numbers and we're saying, well, why are they being affected the most, is because of access. We don't have access. And because of, going into a court pro se, we run into implicit bias from these judges. I can murder somebody and get a jury trial, but I have one person deciding on whether I should see my kids 50% of the time or every other weekend. That's the problem here. And that's only changed through legislation.
Wow, that there is quite a thing to consider. So, because I've heard horror stories, but more than on a few occasions, because the judge has a bias against.
Yes.
I mean, I've heard people come to me ad nauseum saying this, and of course, the judges aren't like sacrosanct. They're not above corruption. They're not above bias. They're not above anything. They're just like any other human being. We know there's corruption in the legislative branch, but somehow people think sometimes that the judicial branch is is above all error, and there's clearly bias from the bench. There's clearly legislation from the bench. So if the judge is the only person deciding whether or not you get to see your kids, as you mentioned, if I'm accused of taking someone's life, I get 9 people making a decision, or a jury.
There, I was in court one day, and these two persons were getting a divorce, and they go to this little room and they decide about the children, the two parents, and these two parents could not agree on anything. And the judge looked at them. I'll never forget what she said. She said, "You know your children. You know the circumstances. If you do not make a decision, the court will have to make a decision, and the court does not know you. So they will have to make the best decision that they can with the little information that they have. It is better for you two to go into that room, I forgot what they call it, and decide what you want for your children. But they could not decide, and it was a whole mess.
Mm-hmm.
It ended up to be a whole mess. But she gave them some good advice, but they could not follow. They could not agree. They were so angry with each other that they could not put the children first. They should have, they could not put those children first. They were just looking at basically each other, and the children suffered greatly for this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, perhaps we need to be able to, have legislation that, and I know you have legislation, but I'm just saying in sense that that's child first focused. In my world, children would be first focus everything. When I ran for mayor a couple of years ago, that was the number one plank in the platform. Child-centered everything. Every decision that government makes, every decision that business makes, every decision that nonprofits make within the city of Hartford should be child-focused first. How does this affect the most important asset, the most important constituency that the city has? It's children. And then everything else flows. It seems to me that the kids are the last thing that anybody's actually thinking about.
Absolutely.
There's a documentary. I'm sorry.
Good. No, go on.
There's a documentary that exists. It's called Erasing Children. Go to erasingchildren.com, and what that documentary talks about is the children's perspective. And I was in tears. I mean, I'm watching these little kids on the stand. Not even on the stand, but they're interviewing little kids and asking them, why they don't want to go to daddy's house, and they don't even know why. A lot of them are talked into why, and they're crying because we don't look at the children. We look at our, we can separate and say, hey, we worked it out, and then you go to a lawyer just to affirm in a divorce. That lawyer will say, well, why are you settling? The laws are set up where you can get this much in child support. Mm-hmm. There's laws that set up that if you were home with the child, you should be able to be with the child more. And now we go from, all right, we had an equitable split to now I know I can have the upper hand if I go into court. Mm-hmm. And they'll tell you, you can pay for a lawyer. They say there's going to be a winner or a loser. It's not going to be equal. And they'll tell you that. I'm a father, I'm a firefighter. I work 2 days a week. My kids lived with me for 8 years. Mm-hmm. And I went into court, and the judge was allowing their mom to move to across the country, because she decided we split, that she no longer wants to live here. I had family services talk about that they're on my side. I had the therapist say that the children struggle with change. Everything was up. My kids are of mixed race. They were going to move to a place with predominantly white, no representation of their culture. And he told me to my face, because I work 2 days, I can use my days off to travel to South Dakota. And according to him, that was the best interest of the children.
So he determines what's in the best interest of the children, not knowing your children from he is a stranger off the street.
And the mixed marriage, which I also had a situation with, the one that is not
the white female,
yes, could blow you out of the water, and depending on that judge. Mm-hmm. And how biased that judge is, you don't have a chance, even if you are more of a caretaker than she is.
Absolutely.
It does not matter. It does not matter. A letter was written. I think a letter was written, a very good letter. And the lawyer said you could not have possibly written this letter. You could not have. And so they said, why? Because you could not possibly have written this letter. And they said, why do you think I could not have written it? No, not you. Because it was a better letter than she probably could have written. And they took it into consideration, although we lost anyway. But she didn't think a person of color could write a letter like that.
Absolutely.
It just it made no sense. And this was a lawyer for the children, who was a friend that worked in the same department, sort of, as the mother. Okay.
Yeah.
So many things went on, and our whole family came. 15 people came to a court. They did punish the lawyer, but they punished her, but that had nothing to do with the children. It was something that she did to them, not something that, it was a horrible situation. It was a horrible situation. But they grew up in America just like we did. They have their biases just like us, and they have and the black male does not seem to me has a chance.
They said that to me. It's funny you said that, because they said that to me when he said, well, he speaks well. And I'm going to use this when I file a grievance. He said, oh, he speaks well. He talks the talk but doesn't walk the walk. Because I'm an educated black man. I have a college degree and a career. That the same way, like you said in the letter, that they look at me as if I'm not allowed to present myself in a certain way.
Yes.
I'm not looked upon, or I'm looked at different now that I'm acting out of character if I act educated. She had no education. She dropped out of college. I had a bachelor's degree. I've done all this and succeeded in all this, and still was fighting for 50-50. I wasn't even asking for full custody. I was asking for what was equal, because I can only add a certain amount of value to my children, and my ex, even though we're not together, she adds that value that I can never replace. So I still respected her as the partner that I chose, and that my children have a relationship with her that I don't want to break. But it was valued, and her uncle got on stand and says, there's no black kids out here, but there's some Guatemalans that work for me, so I'm sure she'll do well. And there's so much testimony that I have. There's so little law that he used to base. She didn't even have a job over there. She was to quit her 2 jobs here to go live in the basement at her uncle's house. That's abduction through the courts. Moving the child against their will and putting them somewhere else. They didn't have schools out there. She'd said that the school system there was better than Connecticut. Connecticut school system is number 3 in the country. So there was all these things that we had in my favor. And my friend's a lawyer. She said, there's no way this judge will let her move. And sure enough, they put that in there, in his order. And this is what pushed me. I did a GoFundMe, because now, after that happened, I had to go to appellate court. And in appellate court, it's $10,000 minimum just to get an attorney. You have men and women who can't afford an attorney at $1,500 retainers, $2,000 retainers. But now for the judge, and this goes to liability, the judge got it wrong, and now I have to find $10,000 to show that he was wrong. So most people don't go to appeals, and because they don't go to appeals, this is why this law is important. So these judges are not getting it wrong. Everybody has implicit bias. I could look at somebody and think a certain way about them because of my experience with somebody else. And because these biases are so subconscious and there's no check systems for that, the laws is the only thing that we have in our favor. Because we're going to run into this problem over and over again.
Wow. So in the legislative process, is there legislation currently pending? Or is this legislation that needs to be crafted for I guess
Yes.
the next legislative cycle here in Connecticut?
So we have a bill, 5342, which states it's the rebuttable presumption between 2 fit parents. And 2 fit parents meaning if there's absence of domestic violence, any abuse on the child, any neglect, any parent who's unwilling to facilitate a relationship with the other parent, we're looking at the fit parents. So these are parents that a court would have to find that parent unfit. 9 times out of 10, they do not find these parents unfit. They don't even look for fitness of that parent. They put the child in one household and deem the other one a visitor. But if that other party passes away the next day, where does that child go? Back to me, right? Back to the other parent. So now I'm only as good as the death of another parent, and that's a huge thing. So when I talk about we look at what the statistics and who they affect the most, it affects us the most. And if you look at the racial compositions of our legislative branch, the racial compositions of our judicial branches, they don't reflect our communities. So now you have people who have implicit biases, but now they're not coming from where we come from. We're looking at certain men as deadbeat dads because they're unable to provide child support with these high child support numbers. Some of them, they can't even get by on their own and provide for themselves, let alone children. So now we're labeling a certain person as a deadbeat dad, and deadbeat, when I mean deadbeat, I mean somebody who's not involved. Deadbeat shouldn't be based off of financial. Access to resources. We're not just, both parents have an equal responsibility to provide the basic needs for that child. That's it. The basic needs: food, clothing, shelter. Nothing else, nothing more. But when we get these inflated child support numbers, if you look at, Tyrese and all these other celebrities and their exes wanting $20,000 a month, $50,000 a month, that's not the basic needs of a child. These are access to funds because they feel entitled, rather than saying, no, I'd rather the person that I had a child with involved in my child's life.
What if the children had a, it would seem to me that children, at the very least, children have a right to their mom and dad.
Absolutely.
I mean, they are living, breathing proof of their mother and father. They are the direct result of their mom and dad. They are their mother and father's DNA. So they should have, if society looked at children as they have a right to their parents. So it would seem to me that the parents have to be it has to be proven that the one parent's presence is a harm to the child.
Absolutely.
Not by default.
And an angry parent could do much harm.
Absolutely.
Much harm to a child and how they think about their father. They could say anything. They could do just horrible things to a child.
Your dad is no good. He'll bomb this and that.
Yes. And the child is confused. I have two grandchildren the oldest who always wanted to please her mother. No matter what, she wanted to please her mother. Mm-hmm. She's going through hell. The little one, that's her dad, and she didn't care what mommy says. She doesn't say that. She says, I'm not hanging up on daddy. I want to see daddy. So you get these personalities in children, and they're both going to be harmed. I'm praying that the little one comes out okay, because I think that the older child is going to go through some drama before she actually sees who her parents are, who they are. Because she really knows who they are, but she chooses one and not the other. Maybe, so because they have a certain relationship. I could remember having a great relationship with my mother, and anything she said about my father, it was my father's fault. And then as I grew up and looked at the picture, I said, oh my goodness, my poor father. Because I could see and I could understand later when I was older, which I'm hoping my grandchildren will see, but they're going to have to go through a lot of hard times. In one week they love their father, and the next week they hate their father, and it's really like an up and down all the time, depending on what mommy says.
What is that? That's unfortunate too, because we look at that exists, and statistics exist. If you look at, and it blew me away when I researched this, but you look at the number one parent most likely to harm the child, and you Google this, it'll come up: mothers. Your mothers have a high number of child maltreatment statistics against them, and so that blows away the tender years doctrine, all this other stuff. If the statistics show that more mothers are likely to abuse children than fathers, then we have to get rid of this narrative that children deserve to be with mothers more. They deserve to be with both fit parents. Whether you're male, female, both parents have a responsibility to that child. They came together to create that child, and the only time that bond is broken is if one parent or the child becomes deceased. But we have to stop looking at they belong with their mother. Even mothers who get 50-50, they feel less important because they feel that they should have more time with the child, because that's how we view moms in society. Fathers who don't pay feel less of a man because they feel that my only responsibility is to be a financial obligor to my child. But what about all the other things? What about the emotional support? What about women who grow up and they know how to be treated by another man by the relationship that they have with their father? Or sons. Look at criminal reform. I speak with the NAACP president, and they focus on criminal reform. But a lot of these children are growing up. If they don't have a father in the home, where are they going to find a father? In the streets. So now they're turning to gangs, right? Because gangs, when they split up the black family, gangs, they're looking for family. How do we find family? We find family and love in gangs, because they feel that these people love me. I don't have a father. I have nobody to show me things. So if I could find that in a gang, if I could find that in drugs, if I can find it in the streets or social media, I'm going to find a father somewhere. I'm going to find a mother somewhere.
That's really true. But this idea of men thinking they only have a financial obligation and when I was coming up, a discipline obligation to the children. My father once told me, and men have been changing since for the last 30 years or so, but basically they weren't supposed to show emotion. My father said to me at a kitchen table once, men's don't cry. He said to me, and it made me cry. It said to me, I have to go in a corner by myself if I feel bad and cry. And I thought that was because I've always had the privilege to cry. My mother always had the privilege to cry, but he did not think that he had the privilege to cry. And he taught my brother that. These are what girls do and these are what boys do, and boys don't cry and boys don't do this. Well, we're just kind of coming out of that. It's only been, men didn't push carriages. Men didn't change diapers. They had to look like a man. And that's what a man did. And a man does this and a man does that. I remember my father saying, a man. I'm a man. And I kept saying to myself as a little girl, well, we can see you a man. What are you talking about? I didn't understand. It was a whole different thing. And I think that some men still have that. But it's so wonderful that they're growing. The first time I ever saw a man get on a bus with his children, it made me so happy to see a man pushing a carriage, to see a man holding his children's hand. That wasn't so common.
Well, we'll take a short break. We'll be back. It's Morning Talk. Stick and Stay. We're talking about children and the obligations fathers have to their kids. Our special guest is Mr. Allen. Stick and stay, my friends. Don't go anywhere. Morning Talk. We'll be right back.
Every bad political decision is made by a politician elected to office. So if you think your vote doesn't matter, just remember this. There are people sitting with politicians in a back room making deals about your future, making policies about your children, making decisions about your neighborhood. To them, you are just a vote. You are not their charity. You are not their cause. you are just a vote. Elections have consequences, and if you don't vote, you are actually voting to keep these people in power to work against you. Now, more than ever, you need to make your vote count. Declare your independence from the plantation of party politics and free your political mind.
My name's J.C. McCauley.
I'm Naisha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
All right, my friends, welcome back. It's Morning Talk. Jay Hogard in the background, by the way. Dynamic. We're talking about your children and pretty much the right of fathers to be able to be involved in their children's lives, and the way society has created an impediment to such, and it's even more traumatic and devastating for black males who want to be involved in their kids' lives, and people of color. And so you can see where this has become an extremely profitable undertaking. You follow the money, and the dollar matters more than anything else. Yeah. So as long as we can extract money out of the system, it's like an engine. It's primed and it just keeps running. And the kids become casualties of the system that's supposed to be working in their favor. And it clearly is not working in their favor.
They become objects to the mother, or they're being used like, Chip, they're just being used all the time, one against the other. And it's a horrible thing. And I really think that mixed marriages are worse.
When they don't go well.
When they don't go well, they're gonna use a race card. I'm sorry.
Inevitably.
It's a race card. And it was so clear in court as we're looking at this, so clear. And I said, "Oh my God!" I could see it as clear as day, and I could, and you see the workings of it back and forth as the black man sits there, and no matter what he says, it just doesn't seem to matter.
Well, our guest is Sean Allen. He's the Connecticut board chair of the National Parents Association, and he is fighting this fight in terms of equity and inclusion and justice for the children and black men, people of color. It's just it's a horrible thing that's happening. For those people that are just joining us, once again, tell us about why this is important and how they can get involved, Sean.
Absolutely. So we talked about the importance of maintaining the parent-child relationship after dissolution of marriage and separation. And why this is important is because all the studies that show when children don't have access to both parents, and I'll give you a couple things. 63% of youth suicides are children who come from fatherless homes. 90% of all homeless and runaway children come from fatherless homes. 85% of children who show behavior disorders and aggression come from fatherless homes. 80% of rapists come from fatherless homes, 14 times the average. 70% of high school dropouts come from fatherless homes. And when I mean fatherless homes, after separation and divorce, these are children who don't have access or equal access to their children, or to their parents, actually. And what happens is they're looking and they're processing these emotions of how I had a father or a mother half the time to now why can I only see them once in a blue? We get regulated to visitor status, and these are our children. And, because we have a culture where if it doesn't work out between each other, we can go to court and there's going to be a winner and a loser. That's where we're going. We don't even have to go to court. But the majority of people, if they can't, if they can't figure it out, they go to a mediator. And these mediators are what's messing it up because, A, they don't have the time. They don't have the family history. They don't know you. They don't know your children. Some of these judges, you're going in front of these judges, they probably spend an hour, 2 hours tops on your case. And they want to clear their docket off. They could care less whether you are a stand-up dad or a stand-up mom, etc. It's usually whatever the lawyers tell them, if you have a lawyer, or, depending on how they feel that day. So it's important that we push our legislators to have some equitable outcomes, and it starts at 50-50. And when I mean 50-50, this is for specifically fit parents. There's been some pushback from domestic violence. What about domestic violence situations? We're not talking about people who abuse. This is specifically for two parents, unless proven otherwise. You should start off as equals and go from there. There are abuse victims. There are women who are losing custody of their children. We had a state senator who pushed for the Jennifer's Law, which is a bill that talks about coercive control from partners. Abuse exists in other forms. She's now alienated from her 3 children, where it's forced her to resign. So people lose custody all the time, men, women alike. And if we look at if they're a fit parent, if there's anything, I don't care what you guys went through as a couple, you're still a parent. If there's no abuse, you have a relationship with that child, that relationship should be maintained. And the only way we're going to do this is if we're backing legislators and pushing our legislators to say, hey, listen, you are the only one who could change this, so the judges don't get it wrong, the lawyers are not getting it wrong, and we have a different type of culture here.
So it needs to be codified in law, so there's no wiggle room, no opportunity for the judge to determine based upon what's not there, so I better step in and make it concrete.
I know you brought up fathers, and I bring this important point up. So I don't know if you guys are aware of Daniel Moynihan. Daniel Moynihan was a economist. He was charged to come up with the reason for poverty back in the 60s, and he talked about the Negro family. And he pushed the Negro family, and he said, even after the civil rights movement, if you take a specific group of people and then you free them, that doesn't mean we're equal. And because we're free, we're not equal, a lot of other ways we're being affected. So if you distribute equity we're still going to be affected, because if you tied my hands behind my back for 400 years and all of a sudden say, okay, now you have the same opportunities as your other counterpart, that's not true. And he said specifically, when we break down the family unit is the strongest unit we have here. And if we teach people that, we pushing men out of the workforce. If you look at, if child support, they look at child support as deadbeats. If you don't pay your child support, what happens? And I'm sure you know this answer.
Mm-hmm. You don't pay child support, you go to jail.
You go to jail. You can lose your professional license. How does that help a person if in order to pay child support, you need a job? If you're taking professional licenses, you're taking driver's licenses away. You're taking away privileges and tools that we need in order to be successful to provide for our children. Then child support is not meant to support the children. There's fees attached to all that stuff. If a man doesn't pay child support, there's enforcement. Woman doesn't even have to, or a man doesn't even have to say, hey, listen, I want child support. There's enforcement services out there that the government pays for to collect this money. But if that parent withholds a child, is there visitation enforcement? I have to pay a lawyer now to fight because I'm unable to see my children. But if I don't pay, it's free game. So there's certain things, and when you look at who's it affecting the most, you're putting the majority amount of people in prisons because of child support are black males. Yet the CDC shows that black males are more involved in their children's lives than any other race. So we have to look at the narratives that we're pushing. When we look at women who say, oh, he's a deadbeat dad, well, did you ask him to do anything else besides pay? If he can't pay you, could he babysit while you go work? You both have an equal opportunity and equal responsibility for that child. And we're looking at to get rid of the he say, she say, because you split up, didn't work out. But you still came together at one point and created for that child. If he was a deadbeat, you knew he was a deadbeat before you had a child, but you still had a child with him.
That's the truth.
So we can't call people out after the fact and say, oh, he ain't doing this, he ain't doing that.
Right.
Well, did you investigate? I mean, to put it the truth, are you going to let anybody drive your car? No. But you have a baby with them before you investigate them. So we got to start.
Most of the time, she already knows.
They already know.
They already know. We already know. I'll say we already know. Yes.
And I'm glad. Yeah. It's the fact that, and I even though my ex decided to do something, she had every right to. I can't be mad at her because this is the person that I chose to have a child with. So if she lacked in certain areas, I knew that before I signed up.
Yep.
And I'm not a victim. I'm a participant. And we have to start looking at the best interests of the children, because these judges are not. They go to school for all this law and everything else like that. But again, if I kill somebody, I have a better chance at law than if I'm fighting for custody for my children. And that's wrong.
Amen. Well, I totally agree. I totally agree with most of what you say. It is a dilemma, and I think that basically black males are being targeted, but I've seen white males go through the same thing.
It affects everybody.
Yes,
and I'm not discrediting white
yes.
males. I work with any race, any gender. Mom, dad.
Yeah.
Now there's a Parentage Act where same-sex marriages are considered parents, and they have equal rights as parents as well. And they push to get that bill across. So, I look at who I am as a black male, and then who these statistics predominantly affect. Because there's more white males on welfare, but it hurts us as black Americans more. And that comes from something. So when you start looking at the destruction of the black family, there were more intact black families during slavery than they are now.
Yes.
And these are stuff that we're not pushing, we're not learning about. And we think that, oh no, this and that. Or you look at a woman when she says, I'm a strong, independent black woman. Why do you need to push that narrative? It's okay to be self-sufficient. But if you're pushing an independence, then you're removing the other part of a unit. And a family unit is the strongest thing we have out. If you look at any president, you don't see single men going in as presidents or single women. If you look at the majority of successful people in your communities, a lot of them are married. You know, when you don't have marriage and you don't have these things, you have disorganization. You know, we hyper-criminalize, we over-sexualize music in our communities. The number one cause of death for black males 44 and under is what?
Shooting?
Homicide. Here I was thinking it was blood pressure or heart attacks or, you know, high cholesterol, this and that. Homicide. Between ourselves. And these are the statistics that we need to push because we have to make it right. And if we don't make it right, then how we look at, you know, there's not, you know, I go to more black baby showers than I go to black weddings. Because of how we value ourselves, how we value our women, and how we look at family. But I can tell you one thing, if we create a child, we both need to be present. And we both have an equal responsibility. And it shouldn't be based off income. These people who do well, they get penalized because they're making more now. Even that's wrong. You both have an equal responsibility to provide for that child. It shouldn't be, well, he makes more than me, she makes more than me. No. That just means that a child will have a lifestyle when they're at this house, and I have a different lifestyle when they're at that house, and that's okay.
What do you think that women feel as though if they make more money than the male, that they have the right to disrespect him in so many ways? Because I don't need you anyway. I've heard many a woman say, I don't need you anyway, I make more money than you.
That's the narrative that we push. I mean, you know, women's liberation was important, but a lot of things from that got taken and turned into something else. And T.D. Jakes pointed this out too. He says we're raising our women to be men. We're raising our women to understand that I don't need you as a man. I can do from our own. If you looked at back in the day, and I just pointed this out with a colleague of mine, back in the day we had factories. Men had places to work. Especially our men, we had places to work. We worked with our hands. They came in, took the factories out, put them in China, put them everywhere else. So what did that mean? They took jobs out for us. We couldn't make money with our hands. In a place where we were less likely to get a degree, you need a degree now in order to get a job. Without access to education or wealth, you didn't have access to education, so that was limited. So now what that did, they pushed us even further back. So now that they pushed us further back, you know, you had the nuclear family where when the factories existed, we could provide for our women and our children. Once they took that out, now it's harder for us to get education. So now we have no home ownership. We're paying rent, so you're paying a premium to live somewhere rather than a mortgage. 9 times out of 10, a lot of my counterparts, their families gave them money to go buy a house. They paid for them to go to school. Some of us are first generation in college. And now we did that with loans that we took out. We're paying rent, so it's harder for us to do certain things. And now that we get a narrative of where we're pushing women to join the workforce, and in their minds they're saying, well, I don't need a man. I don't need you. I could do this. We need each other. Just as a man, I need a woman. As a woman, you need a man. We didn't have that baby by ourselves. We have to get out the fact that we don't need somebody, because we all need somebody. And it's okay to be self-sufficient, but independence, if we push independence, you're going to end up alone. And the man, like T.D. Jakes said, if you're pushing this independence, then what value do I serve in your life? What place do I have in your life? And we're teaching a woman, if you've ever read the it's called the Willie Lynch letter.
Oh yes,
The Making of a Slave. And he said, when you break down the black male in front of his woman, and you continue that cycle, and then you have these psychologically independence where you have these welfare programs. We have able-bodied people able to work, but now living off of government-assisted funds. You keep the woman married to the state. Now that they're married to the state, they don't need the man. And they push the thing that we're not going to give you welfare if there's a man in the home. So now if there's a man in the home, you're not even going to receive financial assistance.
We're married to Section 8.
We definitely don't need you because we're going to get funds by pushing you out of the home. So now you have no place in our lives. And that Willie Lynch letter, if you read it, I was in tears. I read this thing and I'm looking at it. I said, this is exactly what's happening. And all we keep saying is, no, I don't need a man. I don't need this. You had that child with a man. At one point, that man mattered to you. And vice versa. I tell these men who, they break up with their exes and they bad mouthing their kid's mom, this and that. That's wrong because your child is seeing that.
Mm-hmm.
At one point, that person, you did exactly what you wanted to do. That child is a consequence of your decision. And I'm not teaching that we shouldn't provide for our children, but it should be equitable. We both have a responsibility. But if you look at, I guarantee you, and I get asked, how many women do you know are paying child support? Or see their kids every other weekend and a dinner visit during the week?
Very, very few.
Very rare. Very rare. Because we push that children belong with their mom. And fathers belong in the workforce, and that's it. But then you have the majority of, black men who go into poverty, who don't have access. You're pushing them into the prisons. You're perpetuating that cycle. And that's generational failure. Over and over and over again, we're pushing our men to say, oh, I'm going to put him on child support. If he can't work, he can't pay, where does he go? Jail. He loses his licenses.
And more little girls that are getting pregnant, they don't know anything. And they're, it's a father who teaches the daughter about men. What kind of man does my daddy want me to be? I want a man like my dad, and and women don't know anything, well, they're not taught. They're taught less than men. So they go out there and they're just out there and they know nothing. Not really, except what they tell them on television. Mm-hmm. Except the TV and the television. Women don't even know about their bodies. No. Little girls don't know about that. They know what's happening to them at the time, but they don't understand that. Mm-hmm. And boys understand it more than girls do. So fathers are just so important. I was a single mother and raised my children basically by myself. But let me tell you, if my daddy was in that house, I know that I would not have ever been a single mother. Mm-hmm. Not if because you go home and it's so hard to tell your mother, but to tell your dad, mm-hmm. that would have never happened with me. I would never have told my dad that, mm-hmm. or done anything that I thought he would just be, But somehow you think your mother will take it. Your mother loves you so much, she's gonna take it. But even though you're afraid,
right?
But to disappoint your dad, I think that and maybe a lot of little girls are like that, about their dads. To think, boy, I gotta go tell my dad this. Mm-mm.
Well, but you said the same thing. It's like your mother accepted you, right? So we teach. That's that generation teaching that psychological independence. It's okay. You don't need him. You got this. You could do this, whatever. Mm-hmm. And then we then we fall into these cycles where, I have 4 children, 3 different mothers. I didn't have my dad. My dad died when I was in high school, so I didn't know what it was like to love a woman. I didn't know what it was like to have a family, and to stay in that family. I only knew what I knew. And because of I knew what I knew, I was looking for family. And a lot of fathers, they're looking for family in different women. So they're spreading their seeds out here and there because they're trying to create a family they don't even know. We don't have what representation we have of black families on TV anymore. None.
Mm. We have sitcoms.
We have sitcoms, and they took the sitcoms off and replaced it with reality TV, where you have us pouring drinks on each other or disrespecting each other, and that's what we see. This is what our kids see. I had a kid. I used to work at a shelter. The kid was 5. He found a little weed baggie on the floor and put leaves in it, and was walking around. And I found this on this little kid, but that's what he knew. That's what he sees on a day-to-day basis. So we can't expect our children to grow up and be any different than what they see when they're young. And if they see a father without the home, these little girls are saying, well, I'm going to find a man who may or may not be in my life. And that's okay because I didn't have that. Or a man to say, I'm going to find a woman who I objectify. because I don't know what it's like to look for qualities in a good woman.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know what it's like to love a woman because my father wasn't there loving my mom.
We are in deep trouble if things don't change, and you are a change maker trying your very, very best with your organization to cause this change to come about. Our guest is Sean Allen. He's the Connecticut Chair of the National Parents Organization.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's right. I got that right. You have an event coming up this week. Tell us a little bit about that event, how people could get involved or attend, if they can.
Yes. So Central Connecticut State University, next Wednesday, the 22nd, from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. We have a panel. Actually, Jay Stan will be on the panel. If you guys are available in the area, I definitely urge you to come out. There's a registration link that's tied to, and if you want to put this out there, we can share the link. But on this panel, we have senators, we have legislators, we have important people. We have a fellow from the Emerge CT, which is a prison reform, where people getting out of prison and talking about their challenges in their workforce. We also have people from DCF, people who are specifically tied to all aspects within the child's upbringing that can talk about the effects of when children do not have access to both parents, what this does for our children, specifically minorities here in the state of Connecticut. So we have this bill in place. We're working on getting it passed. It's Bill 5342, which is the rebuttable presumption of 50-50 between two fit parents. Again, when I mean fit parents, these are two parents who are deemed fit to raise their child. Nothing about domestic violence, anything else. We do not encourage that nor promote. So I would love, if anybody's available to attend, and we plan on doing this over and over again in different colleges around the state.
All right. Our guest has been Sean T. Allen. He's the Connecticut Chair of the National Parents Organization. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to share some time with us. And look forward to the event on Wednesday. Is there a phone number or a email address that people can reach you at?
Yeah, so I can be reached at Sean, S-E-A-N, Allen, A-L-L-E-N, Senior, S-R, at sharedparenting.org. That's the best way to reach me.
All right. All right, my friends, stick and stay. We'll be right back. Thank you, sir, for taking time out. It's Morning Talk. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere, my friends. We'll be right back.
So my name is Nelky Maldonado.
My name is Ramon L. Arroyo.
And we know that Hartford Parent University provides good services and resources to parents in our communities, which are greatly needed because a lot of times our parents, they don't know where to go, how to get information, and being part of this program is essential to them in being successful in their children's education.
And I think that parents should get involved in their kids' education because it's very important. Education is, I always believe, is a success in life. If you got a good education, you can be very successful.
So we encourage our parents to please come join the program, ask lots of questions, and I'm telling you, you won't be disappointed.
How do you define evil? Is it the pedophile school administrator or taxation without representation? Is it the gatekeeping community leaders who sell out the very people they are fighting for? Or is evil the politician that puts out lies and takes in cash? However you may classify evil, having to choose the lesser of two evils still leaves you with evil. No wonder so many people don't vote. It's time for constituents to flip the script and leave the plantation of party politics and free your political mind.
Hi,
My name's J.C. McCauley.
I'm Naisha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
All right, folks, welcome back. Yeah. I don't know whether it's a plan in terms of a conspiracy or the unintended consequences of somebody's.
I don't think it's unintended.
Bring your mic.
I don't think it's unintended.
Yeah.
I think it's it was set up that way.
Mm-hmm.
There was a time when mothers stayed home, or they might have worked part-time or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But in the 60s, when women started really going out to work, in the 70s, in the 60s, they had all those books out about women working, and then stay-home moms were made fun of because they didn't work. and I remember those days, women feeling bad because they didn't work, and people were making fun of them because they didn't work. But there's another side of that coin to women who stay home and don't work for many years, or not really out there. A woman told me one time she stayed home with her children. She didn't talk to adults very much.
Mm-hmm.
She was afraid to even pick up the telephone call and make a hair appointment at the beauty salon. She was afraid because all she talked to all day were children. So you got to balance it somehow. And she was a nurse. So when she finally did go to work, her children were like preteens or teenagers or something like that. But when she went to work, her marriage did not survive.
You know, the grand narrative, which is what I call the word, lays out a tried, true, tested model of longevity for human beings.
Yeah.
You know, with a father, a mother, and kids.
Who teaches us about relationships? Nobody teaches you about relationships.
Relationships now are most certainly not.
It's stick and stay. You know, you make that decision to marry someone. Sometimes you do have to get a divorce, just like it says in scripture. Yes, sometimes you got to leave somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but there's reasons for leaving them. But most of the time, if there's no violence, if there's no adultery, if you just get tired of it, and you still, get a divorce. No, you don't. you stick in there because those tough years are gonna come.
Tough years are going to come, and you have to hang in there through them. It is it's a very interesting dynamic that we find ourselves in, and the society is not faring well as a result of the decisions that are being made. There's no longer everything is centered on self, totally on self. It's like the Garden of Eden. Everything is self. Me, my, I. You only comes into play when one's looking in the mirror and pointing at the person there, calling them you. So it's all about how I feel in the moment right now, and so and everything is situational, like the sitcoms. It was this situational comedy. There's these situational ethics. If it feels good for me, then I do it. If it works, then I do it. Well, they made money, so it must be right. Well,
I felt it was right, so
right.
I went in. I had to take this first buyer's course,
Mm-hmm.
and as I'm going through all of these modules, I'm saying, "Oh my goodness." I went through that and I didn't know anything. I went through this and I did. There are things you need to know as you go along, and you have to. And if you don't learn them, you just keep wallowing in the same crap that you've been wallowing in. It came predators. They had a module on predators in the house buying industry, and I have in my very short life have went through, and I had to laugh and cry and say every last one of them. I suffered through every last one of them. For all of those predators, I made decisions that I knew nothing about, and I did something major. I bought a house and I knew nothing, and now I have not owned a house in 12, 13, 14 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just learning it. I'm just learning this now. But now they have these things set up, and I didn't want to take this course, but I'm so glad I did. That lenders be more responsible. I went to the bank, and a realtor took me out and said, "I like that house." I said, "I like that house. I got that house." Nobody told me anything. I didn't know anything about a house. I knew nothing about a house. That it's another relationship. It's another person or that you got to take care of. Just like it. And if you know nothing about these things, you just keep falling into this thing, falling into it, and pretty soon you're as old as me, and you say, "Oh my God." As you're looking at all the things that you have done and kept doing over and over again, you can't do the same thing and get a different result, right? Over and over again. And I think that's what we're doing now in a lot of things in our lives. We don't learn. We don't know about relationships. We have this LOVE word, and everything is LOVE. It has to do with the flesh, and nothing to do with the heart. It has something to do with the feelings, but nothing to do with the head and the heart and the sticking to it. One mixed marriage. The wife said, "Do you know that we used to own you people?" We used to own you. You can't do you can't do anything for me. She didn't say that one, but I'm saying, wow, why did these people get married?
Wow, yeah, the venom can start flowing. People say things, they say that which they can find to be most hurtful. The singular most hurtful thing I can say. They start throwing these word bombs at each other.
It doesn't help.
And no.
It doesn't help. It doesn't make you happier. doesn't make you happier. You just keep throwing things back and forth, throwing things back and forth. You know.
Well, it gets ugly up to and including killing people. It's terrible when relationships break down, but particularly when they are husbands and wives and they break down, and there seems to be no real effort to restore or work on, and these are things that need to be dealt with, but there has to be a commitment to making it work. Otherwise, it disintegrates. To me, the children are the greatest glue. Unless you marginalize the kids, which seems to be where we are now,
Use the kid to get back at the other one. Use the kid. I think we're in a terrible state right now. Our young people on the streets. And that young man was right about they're looking for family, because I was told that about a person who was in the street.
Mm-hmm.
And he said it was terrible. I think I told you this story before. He couldn't read.
Mm-hmm.
And he got made fun of. His home life was terrible. But he said it was so much better when I got in the street. They accepted me just the way I am, just the way I was. And that was his family from then on until his passing. He improved somewhat, a little bit, but the street was accepting. They accepted him. And another person told me, it was so much better when I got to the street. It was so much better. How could anybody say the street, but they do? It's so much better.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot of work ahead of us.
Yes, we do.
And there's no shortage of things that need to be done. And whatever anyone can contribute to the fix, they need to contribute. There has to be a better working together. I always like to say, we don't have the luxury of not working together. There are too many opportunities to do things that people try to undermine. If someone else is doing something, somebody else is against it, so they don't want it to work, so they undermine it instead of, how can I help you succeed? Because your success is ultimately all of our success. And I think we just have to change how we do what we do. Mm-hmm. In terms of helping anyone that has an idea to do something that's going to be better for us all, help them. Because there aren't enough people helping, and we don't have enough ideas on how to get things right. So,
and get rid of the jealousy.
Yeah, just help somebody. Help somebody if you can, and make things a lot better for them. Weekend's coming. Actually, the weekend's here. It's Friday.
Weekend's here. We're gonna have a long weekend, huh?
Long week. My kids are off all next week.
All next week?
They're off from school next week.
Oh, West Staffordshire getting 2 days, Monday and Tuesday. Then they go back to school. They don't have that week anymore.
My kids are off all next week, and so they'll be here. I'm used to them being home. It was hard for me to let them go to school. You can't keep them out of school. But I at one point in my mind, I was gonna homeschool. Now my daughter's getting ready to go into the 9th grade, but I can remember when she was getting ready to go into preschool and then kindergarten, and I was gonna keep them home and homeschool them, but people talked me into using more common sense.
Well, my nephew did it. Worked out beautifully.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I have grandkids that are homeschooled.
Pardon?
My grandkids are homeschooled.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
They seem to be. Well, he was ahead of the public schools. He graduated a whole year. He graduated the same year his brother graduated. His older brother graduated. He graduated the same year. But he was a little different. He didn't get along in school very well. He was always questioning.
Mm-hmm.
And so and he was forgetful, like the absent-minded professor.
Mm-hmm.
He was like that. You always had to tell him, put your homework in your backpack, or he wouldn't take his homework at all. So he said, he had to homeschool him because they were getting into some problems in school, and he didn't think that, well, if I need a pass to be in the hall, where's your pass? And he talking to it, So he pulled him out, and he did very well at home, very well. Yeah. And they both graduated from the older one graduated. They both graduated about the same time.
Mm-hmm.
About the same time.
Yeah.
Still going to school. They're gonna be like their father, be in school for the rest of their life. But that's all right.
Well, a lot of people just like accumulating knowledge.
Yeah.
Just
like,
wisdom sponges. Anytime they have something, they could learn something. They're just learners.
Yeah.
Helps make a complete and full society. So no plans for the weekend, huh?
No, I'm off. I haven't been off on a Saturday for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm off this Saturday. I don't have anything in mind, but I want to spend some time doing what I want to do this weekend. So I have to get up and get out really quick.
Up and out.
Yes,
and out before someone else commands all of your discretionary time.
I was with my family every single day. Went to work, came in the morning, came home, and then went back to work in the afternoon. And I was with them, and we did things together and all of that. And as the days went by, they wanted more and more and more. I said, this is absolutely ridiculous. Don't you know I'm only one person? Absolutely ridiculous. So I said, not today. Not today. Mm-mm.
Well, tonight I have an event over at Trinity College that I'm going to be covering.
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
I don't know what you just said.
Oh. Tonight. Now, was I mumbling?
You seem to be like that.
Oh,
yes.
okay. Because that's a sign of a stroke. To me, I made sense, but hopefully, I just wasn't talking in the mic.
Okay.
That's why I asked, am I mumbling? Because I know that's like one of the signs. You sound like you're making sense to you, but everyone else hears babbling. Yeah. So I'm constantly aware of these. I'm always afraid of these things. No, I was saying that tonight I have an event that I'm covering. It's over at Trinity College. It should be very, 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 very good, and it'll be good. You can watch it. I won't tell you what it is, but I'll simply suggest look out for it. But this is over at Trinity College tonight from 6 to 8.
Oh, is it a conversation?
It's a celebration.
Oh.
It's a celebration of a local legend.
Well, this is Black History Month, so it probably is about no?
Mm-mm. Nope. A person of color, but not black. Okay. So, so this is a local. This is pretty big. It's going to be very interesting. Yeah. So I'm anxious to cover this event. It's going to be a big event.
Oh, good. So
right. I like covering events. I was asked to cover an event, and I told them that I probably wouldn't be there. I think they were a little bit put back. because it's a press event. And I'll be honest. I'll be transparent. I won't say who. It's a press event for somebody running for mayor. And I said I probably would not be there because I can't cover every press event by all of the candidates.
Right.
I'm not the press. I operate from time to time in the capacity of the press.
But if all of them were there, you'd be there.
If they were all there, I might think about being there. But I can't cover a singular candidate's press event because then I would have to cover all of them. But I say I'm not the president. I'm not NBC or ABC or CBS. Those guys get paid at work. And I'm not saying that like I need to get paid, but I'm simply suggesting that if I'm not somewhere, don't be put off or offended. I'm not NBC,
Yeah.
They have several people all over the place running around covering all kinds of things.
But you are to us. Because
that's why I try to. I'm a guy trying to inform my community, but that doesn't mean I can be everywhere at the same time and all times. So.
See, you're for us,
right?
We don't know what NBC and CBS and all those other people.
Well, I don't know that they're necessarily for you. They're not covering our community
and how they're going to cover it.
Right.
So,
right.
but we know that you're going to cover it. Right. To our benefit. That's
well. I appreciate that, and I cherish that responsibility. But don't be offended if I can't come to a thing, because we're human.
How many candidates are there now?
There's 6 candidates.
6.
Let's see if I can think of them all. Renardo Dunn.
I don't know him.
Tracy Funny.
Mm-hmm.
Nick LeBron.
Right.
Eric Coleman.
Mm-hmm.
Arunan Aralampalam. And John Fonfara. Those are the 6 people currently running for mayor. I think there'll be a couple others.
Wow.
Right. Those are the those are the ones vying for the Democratic nomination. With the exception, of course, of Renardo Dunn, who's the petitioning candidate, and I'm not sure about Tracy Funny. She may be also vying for the Democratic nomination. So 5 of the 6 are trying to get the Democratic Party's nomination, because in this town it's a Democrat town. It's the Democrat Party is a single party town, and so whoever in theory wins the primary wins the election. It has happened that the primary
has changed, right?
Winner loses. That has happened in the past, but it very rarely happens. So to me, the real race begins after the primary. That's when the real race happens. I want to see who's going to be in the general election.
That's when the mud starts swinging.
Right. The general election. That's what I'm waiting for. The inner machinations of the party is what it is. I'm not really interested in that, because it's a family feud.
That's what it is.
That's what it is. So once they figure out who their candidate's going to be, then it gets to me. Then it gets interesting. Like the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You don't know who's going to be in the Super Bowl until it's time. Now we get to see who's, or the World Cup.
I was so excited when some of the candidates came out and said they were candidates, but I'm not as excited now as I'm listening to people's opinions, and I'm saying, wow, this is not the way I thought it was gonna be.
Yeah.
It's not. It has changed dramatically since
Yes, indeed. There's a whole lot changing. So we'll see. We'll see. Well, as the time presses on, we'll get more focused in the political realm. It's still early. It's still very, very early. It's only February. The election is in November. As we inch our way toward November, we'll be more candid as to what's actually going on. So it should be very interesting. Very interesting indeed. All right. Well, our time together has come to an end there, Miss Cleo.
Yes, another wonderful Friday.
Another wonderful Friday.
Yes.
All right. Yeah, special thanks to our guest. He was very interesting. Sean T. Allen, Connecticut Chair of the National Parents Organization. Something definitely needed. A child-centered legislation that puts the kid first in the family relationship. Very necessary.
When my parents acted up, there was always my grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandmother, somehow, she was the boss. I mean, she was like the head. She'd argue with him too, but she was definitely the boss. And had that special respect that only grandparents could have.
Well, nothing like grandparents. Put the kibosh on all of that. All right, my friends, we'll see you next time. You all have a great rest of your day and have an even better weekend. Let's see what's happening here with Jay Hogarth. See you next time. Bye-bye.